A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Naomi Findlay. That's it, Naomi Findlay. Wife, mum, TV presenter, renovator, stylist, you name it in renovation land, Naomi has done it and still finds time and energy to do a whole lot more. I really enjoyed this week as it was so good to see this massive seismic shift, if you like, where people are going back to wanting and trusting the individual person behind the name. That is, people want the person behind the brand name. Naomi is passionate about what she does, and I really like how she's not afraid to drop the ego and focus on achieving results for her clients. Now let's get into it. Naomi Findlay, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm stoked to be here.
Thank you. Now, for the people listening to this who may not know who you are, Naomi Findlay is the serial, all-round passionate renovator, stylist, everything else. Is there anything you don't do in renovating?
Great question. No one's ever asked me that before. No, there's not much I don't do in renovating. And I was a bit worried about the word serial. I was wondering where that was going, but I'm okay with serial in that context.
Fair enough. All right. So as usual on Build Hatch, we always like to go back to our guests and ask about their background, how they got into their particular industry. So how did you get into your industry?
You know what? I wasn't in this industry for most of my life. I'm not old enough to say that half. I haven't even been in this industry for half of my life, thank gosh. I was originally a lecturer in medical science. So I worked in medical science for quite some time and taught in that. And it was a really interesting day when I was sitting at my desk, I was marking exams, and I had a colleague come into my room and he's like, wow, you look so unhappy. And I'm like, but I am unhappy. And he said, well, what do you really want to do, Gnomes? I'm like, I just want to create beautiful spaces. And he looked at me and he goes, well, you should just do it.
Just do it.
You should just do it. And I went through the whole, but oh my God, I've worked so hard to be where I am. And what will my parents think? I think I was like 28. I was married, I had kids, but what would my parents think if I threw all this away? And then I decided that I didn't want to be unhappy for the next 30 years. And so I needed to do what I really loved, regardless of what it felt like I was walking away from.
So did you think about it for some time, or did you sort of do it over time, or how did you do it?
I did have a plan. I'm a planner. I had a total plan. So I had a 3-year plan. So I then, whilst I was completing my PhD, I studied design as well at the same time. And then I created a 3-year plan where I would move out from being a senior lecturer to move into having my own business.
Excellent.
I know, got to plan things.
For sure. And I guess that may come back to your analytical background with science, I'd imagine.
Totally. I am, I guess, a little bit of an oddball, and I'm okay to say that I'm an oddball in that I am quite analytical. Even though I am a creative, I'm quite analytical. I like to understand. I like to plan. I like Gantt charts. I like all that really science-orientated stuff, mainly if it's in a visual form though. But I do love to plan.
And I guess that's the scheduling and the pre-planning, execution.
Absolutely. Honestly, my builders, I think I talk to my builders more than I talk to my husband, because I'm always like, it's raining today. What's happening today? It's this today. What's on next week? Oh, we're going to run out of that. And they're like, we're on it, Gnomes. We're on it.
All right. So that's really interesting. So you had that scientific background, the education sort of sphere. How did that lead into, I guess, getting into renovating, or did you have any backers back then, or mentors? What were you thinking?
You know what? I actually, I didn't mean to get into renovating. I think when I first started out all that long time ago, I was more confident in doing design work for myself than I was for clients. And so I would primarily do my own projects. And I just... I don't know why or how. There's no rhyme nor reason to it except, I guess, hard work and I don't know, a bit of universal support, that I fell into a really strong circle of working with some really great people that also that there were a lot of developers, there are a lot of real estate agents where I got to work really closely with them on project after project after project. And it just meant that, within the blink of an eye, I'd renovated over 100 and something properties. So yeah, I don't know why I ended up in that world. Part of me thinks it's because I am so hands-on. Like I always say, I don't know if it's okay to say this on Build Hatch, but I'm going to say it anyway. Aaron's put his hands to his ears going, oh no. I always say I'm just a boy with boobs, And I think maybe the traditional sort of stereotype of a designer, which is a stereotype, it's not real, isn't that. So I think I headed to where I felt most comfortable, which my happy place is a work site.
Well, as you said, I think that comes down to being methodical as well.
Yes.
And having those important skills of thinking ahead, looking what's coming up, constantly referring back to your program or schedule. And I think I can see where it's come from that early beginning in your previous background.
Well, for me, I'm always wanting to know how. I don't ever want to be able to build something. Like I draw my talent line when it comes to construction. I can construct some stuff, but let's face it, I'm not great at it. But for me, I like to know how. So every time I come up with something, I'm like, right, how are they going to build that? How or what are they going to say to me when I say, let's do this? How are we going to finish it? How are we going to join it? How are we going to do this? If I don't already know the answer before I complete a design, I'll talk to my team. Hey, I've got this idea. What are our ways around it? What are our options? Are we going to be able to actually design and construct this? So I do like to understand the how. I don't like just to say, let's create a giant purple elephant and then walk away. Like that's good design does not happen that way.
I think it's having that practical aspect to it as well. And so basically your journey began renovating and I guess applying your passion in your own projects at the beginning?
Yeah, I had a few projects of my own at the beginning, but it didn't take long before I just ended up working and I never really advertised myself as a designer or said I've got a big design studio. It literally just happened and it was all via referral.
It's funny. Quite a few guests that we've had on this Build Hatch podcast previously all say the same thing. Word of mouth is still, even today,
100%.
Massive.
100%. Now I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but now that I've come back to Newcastle and I've stopped touring and I've put roots down again, it's just been word of mouth. The minute I sort of came back and put my roots down, next thing you know, there's these projects where people are like, we know you're not designing locally yet, but can you? And that's an awesome feeling. That's a really cool feeling.
So Naomi Findlay is your brand. Now, when people reach out to you and say, Naomi, we want you involved in our particular project,
yep.
What's a typical brief look like?
You know what? I am a talker, as you've worked out. So for me, I just don't believe anything in life is one size fits all. My kids are all different, my friends are all different, and nearly every single project I've ever worked on is really different. And part of that is because of the building, part of that is because of the parcel of land or what we're renovating, and also the team that we're working with. And so I like to meet with clients and their team if they already have one and be like, cool, so what are we trying to achieve? What is your dream that you want me to help bundle up for you with your team and hand back to you at the end and enjoy the experience along the way? And so I do like to meet with prospective clients, find out what their expectations are, what their vision is. And I don't mean vision as in, what sort of stone they want or what sort of tiles they want, as in what's the experience that they want? What is the feeling that they want to have when they enter their project at the end of it? And also get a really good vibe for how the team wants to work, because every tradesman is different, every builder is different, every architect I find is different. And I find one of my key roles is being not only the person that helps guide the client's vision into fruition, but helps make that role and make that gel, because I have no ego. I have no ego around what my role should be or how it should look or whether I should have muddy boots or not muddy boots, or painted nails or not painted nails. Nails aren't painted today, for the record. So I think I like to find that groove and fill that space.
I think you want to contribute, basically.
Yes.
You don't care where it comes from, who's involved.
No.
You just want to contribute.
I just want to be part of the process to help that client achieve what they want. And I actually want us all to have fun while we're doing it.
Now, how much of your projects are, I guess, driven by, say, someone coming along and it's purely based on renovating for profit versus someone coming along and say, hey, Naomi, we love your work. We want you to design our living space?
Yep. So most of my work in the renovating for profit space is with students. So I'll have people coming to me say, can you teach me how? Can you mentor me in that process? Rarely do I do design work around this bespoke flipping, without doubt. Most of my design and longer term project work, such as things that I do under the Farms to Fortune banner or bespoke design clients, they generally aren't for profit. However, I can never turn off that part of my brain that is be really conscious of value. Be really conscious of value. Be really conscious of, next week this person could have someone come to them and say, let's take your whole family to Paris and you can live there on us for a year. We don't always move out of our homes for a bad reason. And so I'm always super, super conscious of the fact that we do need to always keep an eye on bottom lines to a certain extent and value.
Now, as well as the word Paris, I also saw your eyes light up when you mentioned Farms to Fortune. So what's that all about?
Well, very perceptive. I shouldn't look at you when I talk, should I? Or are you going to notice heaps of things about me? So Farms to Fortune is one of my passion projects. It goes under kind of two names of banding around Farms to Fortune and Weathered to Wonderful. And it's about the fact that there are so many people all around the country, especially rurally and remotely, that, they're in amazing spaces with amazing assets. And whether it be through drought, whether it be through fire, flood, COVID, whatever it might be, they're unable to see what they're sitting on. They're unable to get an idea of what they can do with a space. And even if they had an idea, they really wouldn't have the vocabulary, the words, the team, whatever it might be, to help create extra income, passive income, add value to their lives and their families' lives and lifestyle. And so Farms to Fortune and Weather to Wonderful is all about recreating, all about seeing the beauty and the pots of gold that are all around people in our rural countries, whether it be an outhouse, a barn that you could make into a wedding event, whether it be a cottage that you could sell flowers from, whatever it might be, and helping people in a really tangible and practical way create that.
So I think also it's about inspiring people to utilise tapping into their existing resources as well.
Exactly. There's so many people all around the country that, and it's about not only inspiring them, but empowering them, giving them the support, helping them help themselves and be the version that they really want to be, have the life they really want to have.
So if I was a potential client and I loved what you do and I said, hey, Naomi, I want you involved in my project, can you please take me through, like, what's a typical brief? Do they reach out to you? Do they call you? Do you arrange a meeting? How does that work?
Yeah, totally. So usually people will they'll Instagram me, they'll Facebook me, or they'll email me, generally speaking. And so then we will, if they're local, so a lot of my projects aren't just local, they might be national, we will set up a Zoom call and we will get to know one another. Because let's face it, you should only work with people that it's easy, you like them, and you can have fun. If you're going to be working on a big project for an extended period of time, you actually don't want to feel like you need a quick shot of whiskey before you go to meet them.
And make a decision and go on gut instinct as well.
Yes, totally.
And if it's not going to work out, it's no big deal, but at least you've, I guess, invested that time up front to say, hey, I can help you, or I'm not suited to your particular project.
Exactly. There's a client in the beach at the moment that they have ongoing work that will be over some time, that will start as a renovation and, then morph into quite a large architectural extension where architects be involved and all different sorts of people. And literally, so they've reached out. We've had a big chat on the phone. I went and met them, sat down, listened to everything that they wanted, hoped, dreamed for now and for 5 years' time. And then I go, okay, guys, like, I think I'll send you on a scope. Let's talk about what you need my help with, and then we can work out how I can help you. Because again, it's not a one size fits all. In some cases, parts of their project will be very circumscribed. Here's the scope, here's the quote, I complete it, very transactional. Other times, which is like how I'm working on the Lawn Rose farm, today I was working with the plumbers on the overflow tanks. They're like, hey, Naomi, there's no overflows on these tanks. I'm like, cool, let's get overflows on the tanks. And so it doesn't always have to be the same way that you work with clients. And I think that's super, super important.
I think you mentioned something really important there where you actually have that practical input. So I've had a bit of a look at your Insta and seen some of your previous work, and I can tell that you're the kind of person where you enjoy having those relationships with the trades or the contractors or the builder.
Absolutely. My husband is always like, I swear you love your trades more than me. I'm like, well, maybe some days, maybe. But it's really important to me. It's really important to me that every single day we're wringing every part of happiness out of life that we can. And if you're working with a team you don't like, you don't know, you don't trust, then for me, that's not living my best version of life. And I do. This morning when I was getting my makeup ready to go film, my builder FaceTimed me. I'm like, dude, now's not a good time. Like, I'm getting my lipstick done. I can't talk right now. But it is super important to me. And I think that that's one of the things that makes our projects even more fun is our trades that I work with have free rein to say, question, do anything they want with me, because I'm not the client. I'm kind of this buffer, that just holds the client's vision and tries to make my trades, or like all the trades on our team, tries to make it a streamlined, happy, easy experience for them as well. I want them to enjoy what they're creating.
It's almost like being the adhesive between, I guess, the clients, the consultants, the people on site.
Absolutely. And I think that's being a communicator, it is one of the parts that I do love. There are times where I'm delivering not great news, naturally, about something we may have found, or about some chats with council, or, there's sometimes where I don't enjoy my communications. But generally speaking, yeah, I like to be able to make it an enjoyable process for everyone. So I do see myself as the element that brings everyone together.
Now, what about, I guess, dealing with costs? Like, because you're a practical person,
Yep.
I can no doubt tell that you have a really good relationship and understanding with how much things cost. How do you handle budgets with a client? Like, a client comes to you and says, hey, Naomi, I've got a $500,000 budget or a $300,000 budget, whatever it might be.
Yep.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, for me, money is something that upsets most people, whereas I love talking about money. And I think that if we talk about money in building and we talk about money in renovation, there is rarely any hiccups if we talk about it. So for me, if a client comes to me and says, I've got this budget, this is my vision, I will then, rather than saying to my builder, you need to make that happen, or sharpen your pencil on that, which is my most hated saying ever. Can you sharpen your pencil on that? But it will be about going, right, well, this is how much money we have. This is a vision. Can we achieve it? If not, what can we achieve for that? I'm really against unrealistic expectations, and I'm really not a fan of a lack of transparency. When everything is transparent, I find there's never any troubles or any stress, and I think communication is key to that. So for me, it will be, okay, well, that's your budget. This is what we can achieve on it. And it's a really corny saying, but the luck's for less. I think there's so many ways we can achieve a client's goals by being creative and thinking outside the box.
Okay, so if I could pick one aspect of a home or a building or an apartment, any space inside a home,
Yep.
what's the one key area that you could add value to?
You know, traditionally everyone will say kitchen and bathrooms, and that goes without saying. However, there's some pretty solid research in Australia now to say that outdoor living spaces or indoor outdoor living spaces are hot on the tails, regard to statistics. Like people are wanting that more and more when they buy a property nowadays. And I think that there's a whole world of value that can be added to people's outdoor spaces just using some really clever techniques.
I think also, particularly with how the world's had to adapt as well, no doubt you would have had a hell of an influx of combining living areas or utilising their home more because people are now working from home.
100%. One of my clients in Sydney is like, okay, Naomi, I really need your help now because my husband's working from home, I'm working from home, and the kids are home way more. So our living spaces need to be a whole world more than they are right now.
So with your line of work, I guess you're improving spaces and adding additional bits of furniture or different aspects to it. How do you ensure that whatever you do doesn't age quickly, or how do you make it long lasting?
It's a really great question. And everyone who had a designer that did a grey and dusty pink, house for them in the past 2 years will be wondering exactly the same thing. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old, Aaron, I don't know. But for me, it's about being really aware of the finishes and fixtures that will work with the property. And so it's not only about, what's on trend, it's about what is going to sing the same song as that home or the style of the actual vessel that you're putting the design into. And it's about understanding also construction costs. So you can be a little out there on something that is super affordable to change. You can be a little bit out there on something that in 5 years they could spend $2,000 on and change. Whereas you don't want to be a little bit trend orientated with something that's going to mean they've got to remove bench tops and above bench cupboards and pull out their oven to be able to change that one element that you wanted to make a hero. And so for me, I like to focus on what's going to suit the home at the same time as meet the client brief, because I find that when you do that, you have much less chance of it becoming, incongruent over time.
I think also I like the idea of having spaces where you mentioned sort of adapting with the home. So I guess for someone who has younger children, as the children grow up, the house can easily adapt and you can be efficient with what you do with it.
100% has to be transitional, especially whether people have kids or don't have kids. Our needs change as we move through the life cycle. Our needs change as we go from what my kids would call boomers, which we're not, Aaron. We're not boomers yet. As they go from being, boomers to empty nesters, like your needs change. And I think that a good designer will always have a wider angle that they look at than the client. That's one of the things, it's something interesting you've brought up. That's one of the things that I see as my role, to think about just the little things outside of the client's vision just to keep them safe, and have their back in that way.
What I've seen with your particular industry is not so much the speed that it's evolved, but also the way that your particular role has gone from a third party where you might have been asked to produce like a mood board in a traditional sense.
Yep.
And now you're actually part of the critical team. And I guess just like an architect who then prepares the design documentation, gets it up to a certain level of standard, which then goes on to the structural engineer or the other consultants.
Yes.
I'm seeing more and more involvement early on from your particular industry.
I agree, and it's really exciting. It fills my heart with joy to hear you say that you notice that as well. And I do notice that. And And it makes good sense, but it just traditionally hasn't been the way. Traditionally, we would often be brought in a little later in the process after full structural drawings are done and everything's done and dusted. They'd be like, oh, can you apply some finishes? And that's when you get to the point where you're like, oh, wow, I really want to put this on here, for example. And they'll be like, you can't do that. There's not enough support in the wall. And it's like, well, if I was involved earlier, you would have known that's what I wanted. So I think it is becoming much more collaborative. And I think some of the siloed walls are coming down, and everyone, not just architects and not just builders, designers included, are starting to go, we can just work as one big family on this. And I think the outcomes are amazing.
Yeah, I think there would definitely be efficiencies, because I think people are becoming more and more educated these days. So they want to be able to see how it feels, how it texturizes, how certain spaces work. It's not just a case of looking into a plan or a 3D plan. It's going that extra step and seeing how those spaces are actually furnished.
Oh, well, for me, that's an essential step. Really early on, when the architects have got their floor plans down pat and their facades and their initial drawings, I love to be able to be involved at that step and be like, cool, so where's the TV going to go? And wow, there's going to be a big reflection on that TV. And where are you going to hang your towels? Just those really simple living inside the spaces. Architects' brains are phenomenal. They blow me away with all the things that they need to think about, as well as the level of detail they need to think about. And I see a designer's role as helping with that, not critiquing, not, bastardizing, but literally going, cool, well, now I want to be the person that through the mind's eye walks through the home and finds out what on virtually and what does the client want? Does the client love corner lounges? How are we going to put that in here? Does the client love to have a big Jason recliner armchair? Where's it going to go? Because when there's nothing worse than seeing an amazing builder, an amazing renovation, and then the client gets in there and the one thing they can't bring in is the one thing that they really love living with. And I think that's where it gets really sad.
And I think also, I just thought of something then about like lighting is a classic example. So
yes.
Once the place is finished, it's a little bit more difficult to have
and
that
expensive.
Electrician and expensive to come in and try and rewire where that feature pennant light goes.
Yes, or that I just really, really wanted a GPO in the floor to put in a floor lamp. Like, it is that. And I guess what you've noticed is great that it's happening, but it is about saying, well, if we're going to start with the end in mind, we need to probably bring in one of the team that deals with creating that end.
Just on that, do you get involved with, say, someone wants to buy like a house, a renovation project? How often are you actually coming in pre-purchase?
You know what? That is a very, very clever thing for you to say, because it's so essential. I get really I get wistful, I guess, when a client goes, I just bought this. Can we do that? And I'll be like, oh, we could have. But so I do love it and I work in a consultative way, just kind of like you consult a lot, where someone will be like, Naomi, I'm looking for my home to either flip, renovate and stay, whatever it might be. When I find somewhere that I think, so not every property that they go to, but when they're getting a bit warmer on one, they'll be like, hey, can you come and spend an hour here with me? Because it just from the perspective, and I often take some of my building team from the perspective of, is this possible? What sort of fees will be involved? Because having that little bit of a practical perspective and a construction perspective, I can be like, well, it's much easier for us to knock that wall down than it is that wall. So it is certainly part of what I do, and it does make it a whole world easier when you've had that initial insight and you can make sure that expectations about what they can achieve for what they're wanting to spend are in alignment.
Yeah, and I think that's critical too, particularly with renovating, because renovating is actually more expensive per square metre than building new.
Yeah.
It's so important to have that early input from the start so that they can be guided through that process of, okay, when we buy this property, what can we do? 100%, let's go the full hog
Yep.
type renovation, or like you said before, transition and start off with the kitchen, the bathroom, the main bedroom, things like that?
Absolutely. And naturally, order matters so much when you're renovating if you want to keep a lid on your costs. There's nothing worse than redoing things. And so I think that's one place that I find clients really appreciate is helping them, they're focused on, what dinner parties they're going to have in this amazing space once it's done. Whereas I'm like, right, where do I start? How can I do this so that I never touch it twice?
I like how you said before about it might be reaching out to have a 1 hour consultation with you, or spend half a day with you and come along and look at this open house.
Yep.
Or have a follow-up meeting, or it could look like a long brief that goes for 6 months, have regular engagement with the project,
Yep.
liaise with all the site personnel.
Yep.
So I think it's really important to not fit into a particular niche. I think successful people learn to adapt and evolve and not put themselves into a particular corner.
I couldn't agree more. And I would never have said that 6 years ago in business. I would have been, no, it's all got to be templated. This is how we roll. Systems, processes. Whereas now I'm kind of like creating your bespoke vision, creating your dream space, creating your dream win in renovating for profit doesn't come out of a box. And so I do love to be flexible. I love to be that cohesive element that helps make things happen.
When you're not renovating or helping other people renovate, what else do you like to do if you have time?
I like to I loved to travel pre-COVID. I like to mum. I do like to mum. I have 4 kids. And pre-COVID, one of my biggest passions is we build schools in Cambodia. But that was pre-COVID. So my focus for fundraising has to shift more locally now.
I'm curious to know, with your Cambodia project, did you involve your children with that?
You know what, I did. So the first year I had no idea what we're getting into, the first year we did it. And so I didn't take any of them my first year. And then the second year I took my, at the time, 16-year-old and one of his mates. And it was the most eye-opening thing I think they'd ever done. And it was certainly, they probably act all tough about it right now. But at the time they were blown away. They were blown away. And it was amazing. I was meant to be taking my daughter this year, but we'll see.
I think it's important to, I guess, convey those values with your extended family and your network so they can see that their mum's working really hard, and to have those kids have that experience, and not only experiencing what you do day to day, but also that level of passion outside of work as well.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, I don't believe in the whole work-life balance thing. For me, life is work, work is life is love, love is work. Like, it's all one big pot. And with 4 kids, my kids are part of that. When I was getting my makeup done this morning, my daughter was texting my builder, "Hey, it's G here. Mum's kind of in the middle of something. Is it urgent? Is someone died?" And my kids will do that for me all the time. They come onto sites, they do cleanup days, they know how to tip a tipper, because I want them to be part of my life. I don't ever want to be mum's at work, I can't talk right now. So they are very much part of it. And I think that that is certainly something that I want them to grow up with, that it is so important that if you can, that you love what you do, because then it is just part of life.
I can tell from sitting here listening to you talk, and your eyes lighting up from talking about farms to fortune, and then your Cambodia passion project and all these charitable interests. So I sense a lot of gratitude with you and giving back.
Well, for me, if money didn't make the world go round, I just want to create beautiful spaces for everybody, for free. It's a true gift to be able to create a space, create a home, create a shelter, create a school, to be able to create with our hands that brings value, wellness, nurturing, creativity, space medicine, to be able to do that with someone, not necessarily for them, but with them on the journey. It is one of the best gifts ever.
I think you're in a good spot too, because after any disaster, we've had the bushfires, the worst summer in history, then then we had some floods, and
Yep.
now we've had COVID. So we're probably more likely than not, and I'm no economist, but we're probably more likely than not heading into this transition phase where a home or a space will become more about a home as opposed to purely driven by profit.
Absolutely.
And I think people will naturally reflect on this huge life-changing event that we've had,
Absolutely.
and the forces that are coming from, say, the work side of things to now work from home. That's one thing. But I think what we'll see is we'll have this really big shift in, like you just mentioned, people thinking about a home as opposed to space.
Absolutely. And also, I think we're more now than ever, people are pushed to really leverage their properties and their spaces from the function perspective as well. So it's not just about, finding a color that you like on Instagram and implementing it at home. It's I need to leverage this square meterage. I need to make the most of it. I need to make it as practical, as livable, as enjoyable, and I need it to support me on everything from a cellular level to a functional level, because I'm here so much more.
Definitely. And I think, like you mentioned, from the finishes to the furniture, there's a whole collective space in between where you can have input, you can be the gel between, I guess, communicating from client to the tradie on site. The whole works, really.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting you said so many of your guests are out of the box in regard to how they view themselves in their professional role. And you know what? For me, when I let go of what I thought my role should be and truly sat authentically in what I loved my role being, it was such a release of pressure, because I didn't have to conform to what a designer would usually be. I could be the chick in shorts with paint on my shirt, and then other days I could have makeup on and wear a skirt. Like I could be whatever the role required me to be that I felt authentic in, and there's so much freedom in that.
You can just be Naomi Findlay as opposed to a company or a certain perception.
Exactly. I had a really interesting interaction at a shop the other day, a supplier shop, and they're like, "So what firm are you from?" And I just went, "My own," because I don't want to be from a firm. I just want to be me.
And that's probably going to happen, that'll also be part of this shift as well. So to have that backdrop, that background, tie it all into everything that you've done to date, and then morph that into you just being Naomi, I think is a really nice organic thing to happen.
Thank you. And it's one of the things, a lot of the projects that we work on, if they're commercial, one of the things that I love to do is give them exposure through our media outlets. I'm like, well, if I can work on a project and promote them at the same time, like that's just a win. That's just giving back and giving love.
I guess working in your space, you must love working every day. There's always something new, always a nice new product that's coming out onto the marketplace. Yep. So do you have any previous exciting projects, or can you pick one?
You know what? I actually have two, and the spoiler is that they're actually two of my current projects.
Right.
So one of my most favourite ones, which I know you know about, is the Lawn Rose Farm. And the reason that it is one of my most exciting projects is the client is a visionary. She's a phenomenal woman that has phenomenal vision, and then literally gives it to me in like this little ball and says, "Go make it amazing." And so that is phenomenal. And I love that because it's so varied and it's so exciting, and there's such an energetic feel around the project. Like everything there is hand touched. All the furniture is secondhand that I've been doing up. Like everything about that place is energetic. So it's kind of like a throbbing ball of energy. That makes that exciting. And my other one is, again, it's a little woo-woo.
We can't build her up and then not mention her name. So
Denise Duffield Thomas.
Okay.
So Lawn Rose Farm, Denise Duffield Thomas. You can follow her separately to the Lawn Rose Farm. And if you have money mindset issues, she's a woman that will kick those to the curb for you. She's a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. So inspiring. My other most exciting project would definitely be my 1880s renovation that I'm working on now. And I think the reason for that is the home is so old and so hurt. It has certainly experienced trauma. It certainly didn't have any character or appeal that appealed to me. Its energy appealed to me. I couldn't walk away from that house because it was hurting so bad.
So 1880s, I'm imagining double brick.
Yeah, well, double brick stones, dry stack foundations in the main quad, no floor clearances, outrageously high ceilings, and then a lot of derelict. So it is the hardest renovation I've ever done. I was only saying to my builder the other day, man, I wish I was more hands-on with that room. And he's like, Naomi, we haven't even seen some of that stuff before, so don't bash yourself up.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there with those types of projects, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of history, and I believe that our homes live with us. We don't live inside them. I believe they absorb our energy, that they give us energy, and this house has certainly seen some crazy ass times. And so I think there's a couple of reasons I'm so excited about it. One, I get to give back to that house. And two, that I'm probably at my most confident I've ever been in regard to my design ethic. And so it's really exciting to sit in that true alignment and true confidence about what I'm creating, which is a really nice space to be. I'm so glad I finally got there. I'm only heading towards 50 and I finally got there.
So that particular project, have you been involved from sort of early on?
Yeah, so I chose the property.
Okay.
I chose the property. It's been going now since. It's deliberately a slow renovation because we are putting it out through our media outlets. So it's a slow renovation where people can watch every single step of the way, every week. They get to see me drinking Diet Coke at 7:30 in the morning, eating sausage rolls, true tradie life, hey?
Yeah, I can see why you'd really get along with tradies.
Yeah, totally. I haven't graduated to Monster or whatever it is, or Mother and V yet. I'm still on the weak stuff, the Diet Coke.
All right, Naomi. Well, for those that are listening to Build Hatch and want to get into contact with you or reach out,
Yep.
You mentioned Facebook, Instagram, email, all of the above.
Absolutely. So Insta, you can find me, Naomi Findlay Official, or you can just zip us an email, hello@naomifindlay.com.
Okay, Naomi. Well, look, we'll put some photos up on our Insta as well. We're really excited to hear about those amazing projects that you're working on, and I really appreciate you coming on to Build Hatch today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Build Hatch. You got to hear about Naomi's journey from travelling all around Australia to doing exactly what she wants to do every day. Gnomes, as she affectionately likes to be called, is truly passionate about what she does, and I encourage you to check out her work on Instagram or reach out to her for your next upcoming project or renovation. As usual, please feel free to join our Instagram community. I've had plenty of emails and messages over the past few weeks, so please do keep them coming through. Have a great week, and you'll hear me on the airwaves again next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.